welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are going to be making the most creamiest scrambled eggs you have ever eaten. It's gonna be too nice. But first things first, let's get to the prep board and see how we're going to execute this awesome scrambled egg dish. So in order to make the most creamiest eggs, there's a few things to take in consideration. If you watched my last video, I spoke about this easy formula that I developed: execution, flavor plus technique. Very simple equation to kind of have a structure to follow, and you will see throughout the series that you will find this formula used on every single video, because when you cook, it's all about flavor and technique. So how do you make the most creamiest scrambled eggs? Let's start off with the flavor profile. The thing with flavor is some people prefer different types of spices. All depends on your palate. At the end of the day, it really comes down to the basics, and that is obviously salt. You need to season that eggs. I would prefer using kosher salt or any type of coarse salt that I normally grind down to be a little bit finer. And no dish is a dish without salt. The next thing we can add is pepper. The thing with pepper is that you have to make sure that it is really fine, as in ground pepper. The pepper that's a little bit coarse, which is a little bit more grainy, you're gonna taste that in your eggs. If you have one of those grinders where you can adjust the nozzle on the top, where you can really grind down to that finer grain of pepper, then by all means add in that fine grain pepper. The next thing I like to use is chives. Chives gives it a really good depth of flavor. Now you can add in dry chives that you can get from the store, which is pre-packed in a bottle. Just make sure you add it while you're cooking, and I'll show you in a bit. Obviously having fresh chives around is always a plus, so if you can get your hands on fresh chives, then by all means keep that for your scrambled eggs. Another ingredient that is very popular and a must when it comes to making velvety, creamy scrambled eggs is butter. You need a good butter. I'm not talking about the most expensive butter out there, but unsalted butter just picks up the dish to a whole nother level. It's also going to be our fat in the pan, because we are not going to use any oil. On the flavor side, the secret ingredient is cream. So fresh cream always takes it up a notch. So that is basically the flavor profile we're going for. This is a very basic flavor profile. This is the necessities when it comes to scrambled eggs. Now the most important part, technique. You cannot make a delicious creamy scrambled egg without having proper technique. What is technique? This basically comes down to how you cook your dish, tools that you have in your kitchen at your disposal to make the most delicious scrambled eggs. So first things first, you need a non-stick pan. Anytime you want to make something on a low to medium heat, you need a non-stick pan, especially when dealing with eggs. You don't want your eggs to be sticking onto that pan. That's the last thing you want. Cook. Which basically means that if you're using a gas or electric hob, you need to make sure that it is set between low to medium. Making scrambled eggs on high heat is just a no-go. And the next thing is taking that butter and actually coating that eggs. And we are not going to be using any oil in this cooking. Just adds more depth of flavor onto that eggs, and you would see that kind of shine that you actually get. The next thing you need to know, when you make scrambled eggs, you always whisk. I'm going to show you a method called an on and off method, which basically means on the stove, off the stove, on the stove, off the stove. This gives the eggs a better way of cooking and not overcooking, because at the end of the day you want really nice, soft and creamy eggs. And that's basically it. So let's put it all to a test and make the beautiful scrambled eggs. Now that we have our flavor profile and our technique in place, we can actually execute our dish. So first things first, non-stick pan, 3 eggs. Now I'm gonna add in that butter, throw in that butter. So at this moment you don't want to do anything. You have the butter, you have your 3 eggs. Turn up the heat, low to medium heat. It's obviously different when dealing with the electric hob, because the temperature increases slowly. However, with gas, you know, it's instant heat from the time you put it on. And I'm going to place it on that heat. So I mentioned earlier, on and off method, on the stove, off the stove, on the stove, off the stove. So that's what we're going to be doing. So as soon as it hits the stove, all I need to do is take my wooden spoon or whisk and just get it going. Normal whisk, this will do. I prefer a wooden spoon because maybe I'm used to it. Just mix the eggs around until you see that butter actually melting in there. Make sure that you keep mixing. You don't want to stop. Once you stop, that heat penetrates through the egg and then you got to cook the egg. So you want it to be weak, you want it to be runny. Make sure you grab everything around. So now we off the stove, back on the stove. Make sure you scrape the bottom. Don't let any of that egg stick to that bottom. Even though it's a non-stick pan, you are going to find the egg starting to stick just a little bit. But make sure you get all that out. Okay, back off the stove. As you can see, the eggs are starting to cook a bit, starting to thicken up. So now this is the perfect time to add in your seasoning. I have some kosher salt. Let's drop that in, and I have some fresh chives, which I can just quickly cut up here. Fresh chives always smells good. If you have dry chives that's come pre-packed in those bottles, you can also add that in. And then the secret ingredient, the cream. Now what the cream does is actually stops it from overcooking. So once you put in that cream, give it a bit of a stir and put it back onto the stove. We're coming to the final stage where it's gonna now cook in, and you still want it a little bit creamy. You can also add a nice small piece of butter. I am using salted butter, which is okay if you know how to control your salt. So when I throw that salt in, you need to make sure that you're not throwing too much of salt. When using salted butter, make sure that you're controlling the salt that you throw into the pan. Unsalted butter, there is no salt. You need to add in that extra bit of salt. So as you can see, the eggs are getting nice and creamy. Okay, so in the next minute or so, you'll see that whiteness from the cream disappear, seeping into that egg, and a nice yellow egg color, which is exactly what we want. Still very creamy, soft, velvety. Oh my god, this looks too nice. Drop that in the bowl. That last bit of chives that I just cut. The most creamiest, velvety eggs you will ever make in your home. Let's have a small taste, shall we? Oh my god. Oh my god. This is so creamy. It's unbelievable. Anyways, this is for the missus. So let me go and give it to her. But before I do, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. On the next episode, I'll be showing you how to make the most delicious duck breast at home. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one.